Hey everybody, welcome back. My name is Corey, and this is my knife review of the CRKT CEO. I've already done a first impressions video on this knife, detailing how I felt about it within the first few hours of handling it. This is going to be the full-on review. So the first thing, I'm going to talk about some of the most noteworthy specifications. I will link the full list in the description of this video. The overall length is 7.54 inches. 3.1 inches of that is the blade. The blade thickness is 0.08 inches or 2 millimeters, whichever you prefer. So it's a relatively thin blade. The blade material is 8CR13 MOV and the weight is 2.1 ounces. So we are dealing with a very lightweight knife. Things to note, this actually runs on a ball bearing pivot. So the action is extremely smooth. In terms of its handling, it is right-handed, tip-down carry only. You cannot replace the clip, and you cannot put it in some other spot on the knife. You cannot make this tip up. It is the way it is. That is how it's going to be. Choil, jimping, lanyard hole. There is a sharpening choil. It is certainly not a finger choil. There is no jimping. And there is no lanyard hole, as there should not be, because you will come to find out, if you don't already know, that is simply not how this knife was intended to be carried or used. Type of action, type of lock. It's a thumb stud liner lock. You can see the liner right there. We'll talk about that lockup in a little bit. For my notable first impressions, I would say there was a very brief break-in period. There was a point where it actually would not lock up. That was only for literally the first 2 flicks, and then once I got it open, it has never had problems since then. In terms of the handling, whether or not the knife is intuitive, I would say at first it can be a little awkward unless you're used to dealing with very small knives, because it's very, very thin. So just especially when you're opening it, it's kind of hard to, if you're not used to it, to find a way to kind of get all your fingers back here and make sure they're in the right position so that you can open it when you need to. If you're used to larger knives, this one might take a second to get used to. Oh, there we go. We failed one of the flips. That's actually good to show. That's the next thing I want to talk about, the flipping, the action. So I will safely say this is the smoothest opening knife I have ever handled. It is smoother than my ZT on the opening. I'll say that again. It is smoother than my ZT on the opening. I attribute that not only to the ball bearings, which the ZT also has, but however, I want to talk about the thumb stud and the cutout here. This knife can only be opened from the perfect angle. If you do not hit the opening perfectly, this knife will not open. It will not budge. It will not move. And I think that is the reason that this knife feels so smooth, because it has been designed to be opened optimally from this exact angle. And unlike other knives that also have an angle that they would optimally open at, those other knives tend to have a thumb stud that's out here. There's no cutout. What that means is you can hit it at the wrong angle. The knife might still open, but it might not be smooth, or it might not open fully. This knife, because they give you no choice but to open it from the perfect angle, when you do, it opens perfectly, it opens flawlessly, it opens smoothly every single time, because there's only one way to open it. You have no choice as to how you go about doing that. So it's kind of a blessing and a curse, because it can be really hard to get used to, but once you do, it's an extremely satisfying knife to use. In terms of the ergonomics, feel in the hand, hot spots, chamfering, things like that. You have to remember this is a light use knife, okay? You really can't get an amazing grip on this knife because it's a small knife. Maybe if you have small hands, you'll be able to, you know, I guess it'll be more comfortable for you. But again, if you're used to bigger knives, doing work with bigger knives, this one might require some getting used to. And again, you'll never really be able to get like a super great grip on that, because it's just not what it was designed for. And that's okay, because I'm not going to judge this knife based on medium or hard use when it was designed to be a light use knife. So I really have nothing bad to say about that. Even if I did, in terms of hot spots, there really are just none. The edges are all chamfered in such a way that they're comfortable to hold. Nothing catches on you, nothing catches on your pocket. You can do this all day long. Even the pocket clip, I find that when I hold it, that little curve at the bottom there that might dig into your hand, just the way that I happen to hold it, it kind of falls between my fingers. And even that, no matter how hard I hold this, it really just doesn't bother me. I really can't say that there are any hot spots on this knife. In terms of the comfort to carry, it's absolutely wonderful. It's a very small knife. It's a very thin knife. It's 2.1 ounces. It's a very light knife. And oh, by the way, the pocket clip is extremely deep carry. It goes to the top of the knife, maybe just a hair under the top of the knife. When this is in your pocket, you don't see it and you don't feel it. For some people, that's exactly what they're looking for, and I think that's exactly what this knife was built for when CRKT was thinking what they wanted to do with this. Fit and finish. Nothing has ever come loose on this knife. Even after aggressive, repetitive flicking, the tolerances are tight. There are no gaps between the parts. The knife disassembles and reassembles very easily, and no work needs to be done to ensure centering when closed. I didn't show you the centering, but the centering is absolutely perfect. Oh, come on, focus. There we go. Centering is absolutely perfect. And it was perfect out of the box. Oh, there's a hair in there. How wonderful. And it was perfect after I disassembled it and reassembled it, and I didn't have to adjust anything. I just put it back together casually. The centering was still perfect. Very impressive. Sharpness out of the box, it was shaving sharp out of the box. For those of you who don't sharpen your own knives, this might be something that you care about because you want a knife to be razor sharp out of the box. This was shaving hair off of my arm as soon as I took it out of the box. Machining. There's no excessively elaborate frills here. It is a simple, clean design. What exists is good, and I have no complaints. They didn't want this knife to be too complicated, and it's not. And I think they did a good job on maintaining that. Aesthetics. We've got a high saber grind on this knife right here. You can see it right there. And the swedge on top gives the blade just a slicey look, as one might say. The edge geometry, the blade geometry, it looks good, it feels good, it cuts good. Same thing with the scales. This machining, they kind of wanted it to have clearly like a kind of carbon fiber look, but this is just a GRN, glass reinforced nylon, that they have machined in such a way that it has this pattern. Kind of grippy, not too grippy, but it looks really nice, and I think that's exactly what they were going for with this knife. Value. Oh boy. The value here, I hate to just talk nothing but good about a knife, but honestly, the value is great, especially if you get it on sale. I happen to find this one on Amazon for like $32. They usually retail for $40. I'll say the product materials themselves are not inherently delivering excessive value. The build quality, the tight tolerances, and the exceptional action make this knife feel like other knives that are double or triple its price, though, and that is not an exaggeration. I'm very impressed by how this knife holds up, how it's assembled, how tight it is, the lack of blade play, the quality of the machining. It feels as good as I think it could possibly feel, even down to the bearings. The fact that they put bearings in a $40 knife is something that you don't see very often. The knife is true to its design. It is built in such a way that supports its intended purpose, classy looks and light use. The clean lines on both the blade and the handle keep it looking good, while the blade and edge geometry support efficient light use cutting tasks. This is made for the office, right? It's called the CEO. It's made for opening envelopes, maybe cutting some threads off of your clothing. It is not intended for heavy use. It can certainly be used however you want to use it, but given that it's intended to look good, be light, and do light cutting tasks, that's exactly what it does. And in that regard, 10 out of 10, can't complain. Aftermarket support, there doesn't seem to be any consistent dedicated aftermarket support for this knife. I've seen a few custom scales on Instagram and Pinterest and things like that, but nothing for scale or for sale on a production level. Brand equity. CRKT has kind of been known to be all over the map when it comes to its reputation, but the company has a healthy mix of mediocre, good, and great knives. I would say to do your research on any knife you consider buying from CRKT, but that advice generally applies to every knife in general. Companies with great reputations have released notoriously bad knives and vice versa. So just do your research. But in terms of this knife, it would definitely be on the great end of things from, bad, good, great. Warranty details, full coverage for manufacturing defects. Warranty is for the original owner only, although I don't know how they could prove who the original owner was. It is void if the knife is modified in any way, although what constitutes modification is not specified. You should probably just use common sense here. You start putting custom parts on it, they're not going to repair it for you. Warranty does not cover misuse. I would say regardless, for a $40 knife, given that you're going to have to pay for shipping and you're going to have to pay for shipping both ways, I don't know if something was wrong with this knife, like a broken blade or something like that, I might just get a brand new knife. If you like it enough, I would just buy a new knife, not pay for shipping two ways and have your knife gone for a couple weeks or however long it takes. That's just me. It's definitely a knife that is nice as it is, given that it's only $40 and you can find it for cheaper. If something goes wrong with it, you're not really heartbroken. So I'm going to talk about my personal thoughts on this knife. This is the kind of the subjective part of the video. Let's start with my complaints. My only complaint about this knife, if I had to pick one, would be the pocket clip, and this is entirely subjective. As previously stated, I would kind of prefer, actually I didn't say this yet, I would prefer it be a little bit more square. This knife has a lot of clean lines. It's just all over the knife. We're dealing with clean, classy lines. And then all of a sudden you get to this pocket clip and it's got this kind of bubbly top and it's got this curved bottom right here. And I know you need a ramp, but there's something about the pocket clip that kind of feels awkward on the side of the knife. It's like from here you're going, ooh, sexy knife, looks good. Sexy knife, looks good. Very good, very good. Looks nice. What is that? You know, the pocket clip just kind of comes out of nowhere. But I will say it was designed to look like a pen, basically. And to that extent, I can see how this would kind of look like a pen if it was in your pocket. So I can't say that's an objective thing that's wrong with the knife. I would just prefer it be a little bit more narrow, a little bit closer to the knife, and maybe a little bit more square. I think it would fit the aesthetics of the knife a little bit better. In terms of praises, if you asked me to describe this knife in only a single word, the word would be impressive. The action is impressive. The blade is impressive. The tolerances are impressive. The aesthetics are impressive. The degree to which the knife stayed true to its design is impressive. And most of all, the value is impressive. For $40, you're getting a whole lot of good with pretty much zero bad. Of course the blade steel could be better. It's a budget blade steel. Of course the scales could be carbon fiber or titanium instead of GRN. But those things would put the knife at a completely different price point, and that wasn't CRKT's objective. This knife is everything that it claims to be and nothing that it doesn't, and I would absolutely recommend it to anyone that is interested in it. I hope this has helped you. I hope it's been informative. Have a wonderful day.